Hey guys, I am back again with another tutorial. This time I will go over posing and how to prevent making stiff, unnatural poses. Let's start with a model. In this session, I will be using Spring Bonnie because he's just a cool guy. Let's do a simple sitting pose. I will begin by rotating him from the pelvis because everything starts there. Following this, we'll bend the knees and legs enough to get an idea of what we want. The point here is to simply get a general idea of what it is we want. Let's just make it somewhat casual yet formal. I'm going to move the hands near the center of his legs so that we get that natural feel. I will also add a chair because it never hurts to use a model as reference for what you want and how you want it. I am going to scale the model accordingly to the best of my ability. It's not going to be perfect, but it never hurts to be as accurate as possible. Yeah, that's not looking too bad. Alright, now that we have that, I'm going to rotate the feet and legs just a bit to give it a more loose feel. I want him to look a little more comfortable because he's feeling somewhat stiff at the moment, so spreading the legs just a tad should do the trick. Going to carefully move the hands more towards the center, and I'll work on the finger posing momentarily. Pose the ears carefully, add some weight to them because they should move accordingly with his head. I want the fingers to be naturally in place, so I will often tuck in the fingers more the further away they are from touching another limb. So given this, the fingers closest to the second hand are the middle and index fingers. These fingers will be slightly more exposed than the smaller, less dynamic fingers such as the pinky and ring finger. I will apply ambient occlusion just to see more depth without needing to enable lights. I want to make it so the thumbs are naturally tucked away, so I will be sure to move the second hand accordingly. Alright, that's not too bad. Now I'm going to quickly do some lighting just so we can see the model under light after we finish our poses. Nice, so now that the lighting portion is done, I'm going to make some minor adjustments to the pose. Going to make it so that he's actually looking at the camera and not off into space. Well, now that he is finished, let's try a more dynamic sitting pose. I want to be careful here since it will be a lot more coordination. I want him to lean back a bit, so as a result, there should be an imaginary shift of weight throughout his body. When I refer to weight, I am talking about the imaginary center of gravity of the character. Center of gravity is necessary so that the character can appear more natural and realistic in some senses. It allows us to visualize how the weight is being shifted and how the body should follow through with it. Alright, so I want him to be actually sitting on the chair, not just floating around. Look at it from many angles just to be sure. I want this fella to look like he's just chillin', so I will make his arm lean behind and his knee will be closer to his body on the chair. Make sure to move limbs carefully and don't be afraid to use references. Use pictures, art, even movies to get a better idea of what it is you want to achieve. At one point, you can create poses without references. It's just a matter of practicing. You kind of just think of a pose idea or play around with the model until you see something you like and tweak it to your heart's desire. Can't forget about the fingers here, just move them carefully. I keep it a rule that moving most of the bones, even if just a little, will give the character a more loose feel. This is ideal for achieving less stiff posing depending on the context. Alright, not bad. Now on to the next pose. Let's try a running pose. We want it to look dynamic, so let's move the major limbs in a general direction to get a general idea of what we want. Major limbs include the legs, arms, torso, and head. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It's definitely good practice for dynamic poses. Given that he has limited flexible limbs, it might be a good idea to see it from several angles and also to check your camera angles. Depending on the angle, you might get a different scene. It's pretty cool when you play around with it. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's all part of the learning process. FOV can also be used to achieve a movement feeling, though I'm personally not a fan of using it all too often. Anyways, now I'll move on to common errors I see a lot in the SFM community. I honestly consider it an SFM sin of sorts when I see poses like this. No effort in attempting to pose the arms or legs. Yeah, I get it. A lot of the times, these artists are often new and unfamiliar with more advanced techniques, but it's just something that can be prevented as a whole with practice. When I see artists that have been using SFM for months, though, and they make something like this, I often feel like they don't have the motivation to improve. Another thing I consider a grave SFM sin is the happy eyelids. I can't understand why, but beginners love to do this. I think it can be properly done, but more often than not, if there is a lack of context, then it's just a bit strange to look at. Another SFM sin I see beginners make is the use of extremely saturated and bright lights. I want to talk about this a little in depth for context. Color conveys tone and mood. Given this, bombarding your scenes with color will lead to a major lack of proper mood or emotions, especially if the context itself isn't present or your scene is generally unappealing. Case of point, avoid oversaturating your lights or scenes. Of course, if done properly, it may work in your favor. I will make a future video that'll go over utilizing color properly in your posters. Anyways, let's do one more quick pose. Let's just say Spring Bonnie broke his fingers. We'll pose his broken fingers all wacky and have him scream in agony at the pain. But to properly convey this feeling of energy, we can't just stop at broken fingers and a screaming face. Ooh, no. We're going all the way. Logically, since we want to exaggerate a bit, we want to make it so he is actually interacting with his broken hand as any sane person in pain would probably do. We want his hand to make it seem like it's gripping the arm tightly as if he is tense. To create the effect of a tighter grip, what I like to do is to lift the base of the fingers slightly and tilt from the middle up downwards. Have them almost face the middle and the thumb should be nicely wrapped around the other arm like so. Alright, that is definitely looking a lot more dynamic. Though something isn't looking quite dynamic enough. Can you guess what it is? If you said the ears, then you are right. I want to exaggerate the appearance enough to sell that pain, so moving them back as if in shock at the sight and pain of his hand would do wonders. Sorry, Spring Bonnie. You're suffering for our knowledge. Alright, Spring Man, I'm tired of seeing your suffering. I'll instead show you guys how to make a simple chill kind of guy pose. You could say it's a better alternative to that stiff, happy greeting pose. Technically speaking, you can leave the hand like that for a waving hand. Look, but let's just go the extra mile and make a more cool-looking hand pose. Moving these fingers downwards and thumb towards the center will give us a nice-looking hand pose. Move him sideways just a bit, and let's make sure to move the other hand enough to be by his side. Since you can't see the hand in the shot, it won't matter very much, but for future reference, you can causally pose the hand in several ways. Just know that here are some common simple hand poses you can do. So yeah guys, these are some simple poses I'd recommend you practice, and if you want to, go ahead and try other ones you'd like. Use reference and just know you can never have too much of it. Anyways guys, that's about it for this video. Hope it helped you learn something, and if you guys stick around for the next video regarding color lights or scene building, I'll dive in depth for each one. Catch you guys later.